This is a 1802 pattern red coat, and I'm just going to get you up to speed as to where I am at the moment. So I've cut it all out. This is the front. I've trimmed off the seam allowance down the front edge and round. Actually, we'll show you this one. This one is a bit clearer of what I've done. So I've taken seam allowance off the front edge, round the hem at the front and around here. There's seam allowance here and here because they're going to be sewn to something else, and there's obviously seam allowance on the armhole and on the shoulder, and at the moment it's still the neckline, which I think I need to retain, so I just thought I'd leave it on just in case. I'm pretty sure I need it to put the collar on. This is a canvas that I've pinned in at the moment. I'm going to mark tack it in a moment just to hold it in place more securely, but it's just a hair canvas just to give it a bit of support, because on this side I'm actually going to sew some bastions, so it just needs a bit of substance. And then around the bottom, so this is obviously the wrong side, around the bottom I've just tacked a piece of white serge, which I'm going to then, I've got obviously more seam allowance on this piece because it's going to, if I leave it raw, it's going to fray. So I'm going to just herringbone it up around the edge like that. And here we go, here's one I made earlier. So I've just herringboned around that edge just so that we've got the finished edge. You can see my tacking line just holding it in place as well. What will happen next is I will trim this down to get it, I just cut it to roughly the right shape, and then I've just got to work out how wide it needs to be. I've got to allow for a pocket to go on, and then it's going to have braid around it. I won't need to finish this edge because the braid will go around it, but I wasn't sure about what I'm going to do at this end and this end, so I've left those free from being herringbone down. Okay, this end I expect once the braid's on it'll just fold back on itself, but actually both the same at each end really, but until I know what I'm doing, I'm just leaving it. Okay, so that's where I'm up to at the moment with the fronts. Obviously the lining's been cut as well. So where we're at now is we've done the bastions down the front on both sides. These stitches here that you can see will come out. These are just to hold the canvas in place. Okay, but I'll take those out as I progress a bit further. But the bastions are done down the front. I trimmed, so the last bit that I was talking to you about was here, and I've herringboned the lining on, or the facing on there, and I trimmed the facing down and I've covered it with the tape. Left it long at this end because I wasn't sure what to do there, and I've left it long at this end because I don't know which angle I'm going to end up on here, so I've still got a bit of tidying up to do on the end there. I made the false diagonal pockets, or slanted pockets. They don't work, but what we have got here inside the pleat is a pocket. It's a bit small. I think this should have been maybe a little bit wider, but you know, it is what it is. So we've got a pocket on both sides in the skirt, and I'm now at the stage of doing some finishing. So you can see I've stab stitched here. I'm going to stab stitch, that's to hold that pleat down, and then I'm going to stab stitch this, but obviously without it being held down to the back piece because otherwise you wouldn't get into the pocket. And on this side, which is the button side, I've machined the front edge to the facing, and I'm trying to decide whether to do that on the other side as well, because this is it's a kind of hybrid coat. I'm doing some of it by hand and some of it by machine, so all of these have been sewn on by machine, all the tape has been sewn on by machine, but there's bits that I'm going to have to do by hand, I know. So I'm at a point where I can do some hand sewing. I've hand sewn that along there, for example, just to finish that end off with the tape. I'm going to do some hand sewing while I think about whether to do that on the other side, because it will show. And so the hand sewing I'm doing at the moment is I've pinned the lining. So I don't think I'd made up the lining last time I talked to you. So I've made up the lining, had to piece it because we didn't have enough of the serge in the skirts to do the whole body, so I've had to use a lighter weight one at the top. And what I've done is I've pinned the centre backs to each other. So down the centre back seam, hold them in place, and then I've done the same on this curved seam as well, and then that will bring the front lining across. Okay, if I'd show you in here, that's the pocket on the inside I was just talking about, which is in the skirt. So I've herringboned it here, I've attached it down here and here just so that it doesn't gape. I had to make it a bit narrower because it was going to end up coming over here, and when I do the lining will just cover it. I'm going to show you the other front because that's got the facing on. So I've sewn the facing on by machine, as I said, at the front, and then I've herringboned it on this edge, and I'm just at the point where I've pinned centre back obviously, and I've pinned this seams up. It's going to be big here because I left more around the armhole anyway, and then I'm just going to, shoulder should match up approximately, as should the neck, so I'm going to bring that over, and then I'm just going to turn this under and then slip stitch it along here. So I'm just going to pop some pins in, make sure that it's all flat here, and I don't want it to pull, so I might just loosen that one off a little bit. I think that might be a little bit tight. There we go. So there's no waist seam. There's a waist seam on the lining, but there's no waist seam on the outside, so there's nothing to match up with apart from around the top edge of this. Just make sure that I've got enough in the sleeve, or in the armhole, which I have. The armhole of the coat is there because I want to be able to make sure that I can fold it back. And then I'm just going to put a pin in there just so that we keep it stable. And then see, I haven't cut this pocket bag away yet, so it just needs cutting away so that I can tuck it behind the lining when we line this piece. But I can't do this bit yet because I need to stab stitch here, so that'll be my next step. I decided to hand sew the facing which the buttonholes is on by hand. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a stab stitch, and it's going, so it's a backward stab stitch, so I'm going back on myself on each stitch rather than just doing like a running stitch. But I'm not going all the way through. I am in places, but it's just catching the facing layer. And although that means it's secure, but it's not completely secure. I don't think it matters too much because I'm going to put buttonholes through this piece as well. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I just thought I better just show you what I'm doing. So I'm going in and then coming back behind that stitch. Only little stitches. I'm going back each time. If you look on the other side, there's a little indentation, but there's no actual stitch. The lining's now completely sewn in. I do need to press it, but it's all hand sewn in apart from the armholes and the shoulder seams and the neckline. I've finished the stitching on the bastions on the inside now. Well, they go all the way through. These are my buttonholes, so I've machined through everything now, and then I've applied the collar. And what I've done is I've just laid it over the top of the outside of the coat, so you can see that's the outside, the top layer of the coat, and I've just laid the fabric for the outside collar on top of it. I've then sewn the braid through everything, and gone around the top edge of the collar as well. And then I had some canvas inside anyway. The next step is to then attach collar lining, which I'll hand sew at the top there, well, and then down the front two edges, and then that will tuck in like that, and then the lining of the coat will then be sewn up over the top of it. Okay. Before I do that though, I need to sew my lining shoulder seams together. I need to put the sleeves in. So although it's pinned in place and I've checked it on the mannequin that it's hanging right, I will unpin parts of that so that I can get in and sew the sleeve in. So that's where we're at the moment. Oh, the only other thing I've done as well, not the only other thing I've done, the other thing I've done is on the back, I've started to sew the triangle, but it was too thick, so I'm going to finish that by hand. I've sewn round to like that, but I can't do the top corner, and I'll do that bit in the middle as well. But that's secured that overlap there. The only thing that now concerns me, but it's too late, I'm not going to change it, is I think the pockets are too high. But I'm just going to place the buttons about here and hope for the best right once it's been pressed. And then it'll be buttons on the front, and then it's sleeves in, and then we're done. Well, the jacket is now complete. It's just to let you know, it's a sergeant's coat, which is why it's got the plain lace. It's got and also because it's a sergeant's, it's got these rather than the wings that you sometimes see, which come across here. So it's got tufts on the end of the epaulets. The things that I just want to draw attention to, I think I've talked about the collar. I think the last bit of the video talks about the collar. So then I've hand sewn the lining on here, hand sewn the shoulder lining, and then I did the sleeves first, put the sleeves in, then I sewed the neck here, then the shoulder, and then I've whip stitched the lining I cut it, if you remember, I cut it so it was wider, which meant I could fold it back on itself. On the 42 coat that I did, I pushed all the seam allowance, sleeve and body into the body, and it made the sleeve sit strangely. So for this one, I've left all the seam allowance going into the sleeve, and then whip stitched the lining so that it's coming up to the edge of the body piece of the sleeve, where the body edge. So it's not attached to the sleeve. I think it is in places. Yeah, it is a little bit down it is down the bottom, but it's not everywhere because you've got an epaulette there, which is quite bulky. However, it did make me think that in future I might not do it so the epaulette goes into the shoulder, or into the sleeve head rather, and actually cut the epaulette so that it finishes on the edge here, and is sewn on completely separately, because it does make the sleeve really bulky over that shoulder. And to do that, I've then had it so that, how I've done it, you do see the raw edge of the tape and the epaulette. But other than that, it does make, by doing that way of stitching it, the lining, it does mean that when you turn it through, the sleeve does actually sit correctly. Okay, so I'm quite pleased with that. The bottom of the sleeves, all I've done is I've slip stitched the cuff up. Sleeves are unlined, and then I sewed the buttons on, opened the buttonholes, and that's complete now. So it's going to go off with the breeches that I've just made as well. So this is roughly an 1802 pattern sergeant's coat. However, if you've watched the other video I've just done about breeches, I'm in the process of trying to find out more. I've been making generic uniforms for a long time now, but I think I'd quite like to know what is actually correct when you're making these things. So that's why I'm saying it's approximately 1802. I mean, I may never find out, but I think it'll be interesting to actually see why, so I've always had questions about why is that this and why is that like that, and how do I know that that's going to have a pocket, and how am I going to know that the pockets are slanted or whatever. So now is the time to up my game, basically. So there we go, all buttoned up. My approximate 1802 sergeant's coat or jacket or coatee. I'm not sure which you call it. So just had a panic, I'd sewn the cuff on the wrong way around. So that's the front and the sleeves, and then on the back we have the pockets. We have, the false pockets, oblique or angled pockets, and then they've got a proper pocket in there, and then there's a triangle of tape which covers where the top of the vent is, and then two buttons, which would be your swords or your waist belt supports, basically. So that is complete. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.